Cageside with John Morgan.
And welcome back, pay-per-view edition of Cageside with John Morgan. We are going to look back and look ahead. These are some of my favorite episodes when we get to the best of both worlds. We're looking back to the PFL Battle of the Giants that ended up not being too much of a battle. But hey, it was still fun. Slow at times, but it was still fun. And then we are looking ahead to the juggernaut, the absolute juggernaut, UFC 308, this Saturday afternoon card. I'm fired up. Let's bring him in right now. I can't hold my excitement, so let's get in. Mr. Blue T-shirt guy himself, the first question guy himself. His name is on the marquee, John Morgan. Follow him on X, John Morgan _MMA. What up, brother?
Man, you already know I'm excited. I mean, it was a great weekend, right? For me personally, I got to go call some fights in Philadelphia, some very exciting fights. CM Punk was back on the mic. Always fun working with him.
Hey, did Perez's teammate win?
No, he lost. Anthony DeLembe went undefeated. So I mean, this guy is a stud, man. Sarah Longo guy. It looks like, man, he's going to be good. He wants to debut at Madison Square Garden. He said 45, 55, 70. Give me a call in 4 weeks. I want to be on UFC 309. So we'll see. But it's a great card. If you didn't see CFSC 137, a lot of highlights on there. Go check it out. So we had that, right? And then we come back on Saturday. There's a PFL and a UFC that provided some big, big moments. And now we're looking ahead to a pay-per-view that's not only a pay-per-view. And you know we get excited when it's a pay-per-view week. But when it's a pay-per-view week and it's an afternoon fight, that means on Saturday morning, I get to wake up. And as soon as I wake up in the morning, I'm watching fights at like 7 a.m. here in Las Vegas. You know I'm excited.
And it's just a juggernaut. I mean, it's so top-heavy. It's so exciting. And there's a couple sleeper guys on this card that you guys don't know. A lot of people don't know the names of these guys, but I'm telling you, they are assassins. There are some assassins on this card. So, without further ado, let's look back. PFL, Battle of the Giants from Saudi Arabia. Renan Ferreira takes on Francis Ngannou in the much anticipated fight, which ends up not lasting very long.
Yeah.
And our boy, Francis Ngannou ends up with the first round knockout at 3 minutes and 32 seconds of round number one. In reality, if we want to dial that clock back to around, I don't know, about 325, there could be a lot of justification that we could have stopped this fight earlier too.
Yeah.
But hey, listen, I'm not giving Dan any troubles. This was a big fight. Give him every opportunity.
Yeah, 100%, man. And you know, it's funny because we knew that there was a potential that this fight wouldn't last very long. But I think we all thought that, you know, this is going to be two dudes that are going to trade on the feet and somebody's going down. But I felt like Francis Ngannou fought a very, very smart fight, right? I mean, yes, maybe fans would be like, let's just take these two big guys out there and swing, but that's boxing, and he's done boxing.
That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie, that's what most people wanted to see, these two giants go at it toe to toe. But this was a smart fight, right? This is mixed martial arts, and you have that grappling advantage and that opportunity. Do it, and he got the takedown rather easily. Renan Ferreira, you know, I question a little bit Renan had to know there was a possibility of a takedown, right? And early on, you know, he tries to defend a little bit. He's actually looking for a triangle, armbar, you know, looking for setups. But I thought he made a tactical mistake when he turned to his knees, that he wasn't showing more of a need to get back to his feet as quickly as possible. And that ultimately cost him. So, you know, there's two things here. Number one, how could you not? I mean, I don't even want to get in. I'll start getting emotional talking about Francis' speech afterwards. I mean, tears to everybody that's in there as he remembers his son. I mean, just a powerful moment. That was a beautiful moment. But one thing I have seen, and I think it's a shame, is now I'm seeing a lot of people just completely downplaying the threat that Renan Ferreira was and saying, Francis beat this can. This doesn't mean anything. And I hate to see that because it's just not true.
I'm calling a timeout right now, John.
Yep.
I'm calling a timeout.
I got a lot of thoughts.
You were on a roll, so I didn't want to stop you, but I hope you weren't going to jump the shark at all, because everything you just said there, it needs to be broken down a little bit. And so let's just start with the fight. I want to get into Francis and the emotion that he had. And I want to get into that, and we will, because to me, that's more of the story than the fight itself.
I agree.
But let's get into the fight, okay? Yes, you had to know the threat of the takedown. in my opinion, that's why the line was there. We didn't talk about it because we were optimists, and I think we were both saying, let's let him swing. That's what everybody wanted to see. That's what we were going to talk about. But the threat was there. That's why the line was there, because we always say, where are we going to go with our bets on who has more ways to finish the fight and to win the fight? Francis Ngannou has shown later in his career his willingness to wrestle.
Yes.
I mean, he won the Cyril. He was losing the striking exchanges with Cyril Gahn, went to his wrestling, overwhelmed him. Okay. Yep. So yeah, Ferreira had to have known. But Francis, I think, came out and did something very tactical in literally the first 30 seconds that set all of this up. He threw a huge leg kick. Right off the bat, threw a huge leg kick that you could see. I'm not going to say it hurt him, but it definitely got Ferreira's attention, right?
Absolutely.
And which made then Ferreira try and say, oh yeah, I got one too for you. And he tries to, and he goes and gets it back. But that's, in my opinion, the levels of IQ in this fight game that Francis Ngannou just had. He's like, hey, listen, I'm not going to come out throwing my punches right away. I'm going to sting him early, which then it elicited the emotional reaction back by Ferreira, who wanted to give it right back. And then this is where it just befuddles me, I guess. You have one path to victory in Renan Ferreira. You have one path to victory. Because the over-under on this fight for length was a round and a half. And I think everybody was picking the under. Everybody on the face of the earth was picking the under. You have one path to victory, and it's a fairly easy path for you. It's the only logical one, and it's your best attribute. And yet you don't throw any punches.
Yeah.
And so I look at this from the standpoint of Ferreira. Was the moment just too big?
I wonder about that as well, right? I mean, it's been all this build up to it. And that to me is the only logical explanation, because certainly, I mean, he's training with the American top team. They're the best in the world at game planning. They've got so much experience and expertise. They've got coaches that have been at the highest level of the sport forever. They know what they're facing. They know how to break it down. They're going to institute a game plan. But that's what I feel like as well, because never even really got anything going on the feet. And okay, credit that for what Francis Ngannou did.
I think he only threw 2 punches, and they were counters.
That's it. So you never really got anything going. And then, look, you're the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I'll let you speak to the expertise more than me. But, okay, you hit the deck, right? You're trying a little bit. You're doing a good job. Your wrist control. You don't want to take strikes. You're saying, oh, I got these long legs of mine. Let me throw these up and use them. Let me see what's there. But then it's not there. Francis Ngannou defends that well. At that point, to me, I wanted to see like Derek Lewis-like levels of just, I'm getting up. You know what I mean? Like, not to turn and to post and to stay there when you got Francis Ngannou, one of the hardest hitting dudes on the planet, and you can't even see where those punches are coming from because you're turned over and on your knees. So that was the part that surprised me, where it led me to believe that, yes, maybe there was a panic. Like you said, the moment too big, a little bit overwhelmed, not thinking clearly, because to me, I felt like, as you said, the one path to victory, I didn't see anybody in the world saying, I bet Renan Ferreira will submit this guy. It was, if he wins, this is going to be on the feet. And so when it's on the ground, I just felt like I needed to see more of a desperation to get back to the feet and to stand up. And it wasn't there. And Francis Ngannou took full opportunity of it.
There's a couple things in these grappling exchanges that I was sitting there being like, what in the world is going on here? Okay. Number one, you know what? He did a really good job with that triangle setup. Let's just be honest.
Yes,
it was beautiful. He grabbed the wrist and he didn't shove it in between, which is a telltale sign. He didn't shove it between. He kind of put it on his shin and his knee, held it there, and then shoved it through the legs up. Did a really good job at that. But Francis, I'm not going to say he defended the triangle really well. Because rule number one in a triangle, both offensively and defensively, is control posture.
Right.
Okay. Francis didn't posture out of it. He just ran to one side and eventually came out of it. I was looking at it saying, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Is Ferreira never once grabbed the head to control the posture and never tried to turn an angle to even lock up the triangle. He did all the hard work of getting his legs up there and and I just don't know why he didn't even attempt to do the easy part of pulling the head down, controlling the posture, and locking in the triangle. That didn't happen, which just allowed Francis to kind of walk to the side, pop his head out. Now he's inside control.
That's it.
I kind of looked at that and just like, what's going on? That was number one. Number two, when Francis was in Ferreira's guard, he was like from inside the guard. You very rarely ever see this. He was grapevining Ferreira. Right. That's very easy to undo a grapevine. You literally just pummel out of it, which he didn't do any of that. He just stayed frozen, like literally frozen there.
Yep.
And so when that was happening, I was just like, this is interesting. Where is this going? And then he bellies himself down and c'est la vie.
Oh boy, did you see the replays they put on social media of like the cage side view? I mean, that was scary. I know you've been right in there.
And they were all legal strikes. Maybe one or two grazed the back of the head, but they were all legal. Francis is a smart fighter. He picked every one of those shots.
Oh man, they were thunderous shots, man. They really were. And yeah, went out cold. I mean, that was a vicious ground and pound finish.
I think people don't respect ground and pound. Like the norm, there's a big difference between ground and pound at 135, 45, 55. Then there is, and 70, let's call it 70. Then 85 starts getting worse. 205, definitely worse. And then it's a whole nother thing at heavyweight, especially guys that are pushing that limit. It doesn't take much.
Right.
The thudding nature of it, the human body can only withstand so much. So, a lot of times these heavyweights will just can get in there and just lights out somebody like you can't do at the lower weight classes.
That's it, man. And that's just to me,
it just goes back. Torque that's needed. It doesn't take that.
No, the mass, and that just goes back into me is when I was watching this, I'm thinking it felt like Renan froze in the moment. Like you said, you talk about the details that he wasn't able to finish on the triangle, but then that not showing that like I said, that desperation, that sense of urgency of like, this is not the spot for me to be in because it only takes one or two punches. We see all the time, as you said, like a flyweight, a bantamweight. If they're kind of turtled down back to the fence, they're like, okay, hold on, let me stand up and I'll hold my arm and maybe I take a couple shots, but I'm going to be okay. But you can't take shots. You can't be in that position. There's literally zero offensive ability available to you. So yeah, I just felt like in that moment, again, who knows what, I mean, obviously you got giant Francis Ngannou on top of you. Even if you were super prepared, super calm, and super understanding the situation, it might just be hard to execute. But it did feel like, man, what happened in that moment kind of froze there for a second.
Yeah. And, I think from a fan standpoint, let's be honest, it was disappointing to watch, right? Because we went in thinking we knew what we wanted, and Francis says, "You know what? I'm gonna do the veteran thing. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna take this guy out of his element. I'm not gonna have an ego fight with him, and I'm gonna take him down to the ground. Even though that's not my world, it's a hell of a lot more of my world than it is his world." And he just pounded. I mean, those shots were brutal.
It's funny because, and I know you want to talk about this as well, but it leads perfectly because you said it's disappointing as a fan. And honestly, when the fight was over, at the exact moment it's waved off, I was like, all right, well, that wasn't what I was expecting. And I was kind of disappointed. And then you saw Dewey Cooper and Eric Nixick run into the cage, emotions on their faces. Then you get a microphone in front of Francis Ngannou. And at that moment, my disappointment went completely away. And I felt like this was one of the most beautiful, painful, emotional, special moments in the history of mixed martial arts. So it is wild. That in-cage action left me feeling a little empty. And then everything unfolded afterwards. And I was like, man, this is an incredible moment.
A lot of the stuff we talked about last week, I had clarity in while he was talking. We were talking about a short turnaround, getting into MMA, He had to fulfill a contract obligation. He had to get it in. We were worried about the short turnaround. We were worried about the differences between boxing. And all while not understanding the immense pressure that guy was under. I mean, I think we can say, like, we know what he's going. No, we don't know what he's going through.
Nope.
We can only imagine, what he's going through. But he needed to get all this behind him. And so when, he's talking about how he almost couldn't even go through with it, it led me to believe that he needed to get this behind him as fast as possible. Like the getting in the gym and grinding and having to focus on a behemoth that is going to be standing in front of you while still, let's be honest, we saw almost infancies of a grieving process in the cage.
Yes.
Like, that's what I talk. I'm like, this guy can now finally grieve. He has not, I'm a father of 3. In the moment, I had immense sadness watching this because before he even started talking, I saw it. And I saw it on Nick's face. He knew it's behind us. Maybe now we can grieve and start healing. You saw it on Francis's face. It's behind me. Maybe I can start grieving and start healing. And he hadn't even started talking yet. So everything we talked about in our worries last week, it showed in the moment, the minute he got up, I saw clarity in it and I saw why he did this.
Unbelievable. And as I said, I'm a father as well. And the tragedy that he had to deal with was just, no parent should have to deal with that. Right. And when he gets up there and, he says, look, I wouldn't have done this if it wasn't for Kobe. You know what I mean? I did this because I know he wouldn't want me to quit. And I want to make sure that nobody forgets his name. And, I get emotional as I say that right now, man. I mean, again, a tragedy that no parent should ever have to go through whatsoever, but to make sure that the world doesn't forget, who you knew and who you knew that he was going to be. Unbelievable. And man, at that moment, what had unfolded in those previous 3 minutes and 32 seconds took on a lot more meaning and a lot more understanding. And the disappointment maybe that I felt as the fight was waved off went totally away. And man, you just see how powerful this moment was to everybody involved with it, man. It really was one of the more emotional scenes I've ever seen inside a cage in the sport of mixed martial arts.
It defies logic that Francis Ngannou actually did this. It defies logic. How many times? And listen, I see it here on the regional scene all the freaking time. We've seen it in the UFC. We see guys that can't do it. Their head is not in the fight because they broke up with their girlfriend.
Yes. It's 100% true. That happens all the time, man.
I swear, if you guys are around the fight game, you will see this. Out of every 10 fights on a card, you'll see it once every night.
100%. It's all the time. This sport is so much about mental focus, man. It's so much about, yes, all the technique and the physical tactics and everything that's involved is big in it, but it's so much about the mental space that you have to be in to be successful and to be dealing with that type of tragedy and to really be able to hone it in. As you said, look, going into this, we talked about it multiple times. We were a little bit worried for Francis, and we laid out a lot of reasons why, and they were all very logical reasons. It was not making things up. These were physical reasons, emotional reasons, psychological reasons that there were to be concerned. And afterwards, I think everybody around him admitted they were all very legitimate concerns, and yet he was able to put all that aside and deliver, man. And this huge moment was able to deliver on this huge stage, again, against an opponent that is incredibly dangerous. And I see a lot of people trying to write off who Renan Ferreira is and what danger he actually presented in there. This was a dangerous opponent that was amplified by all the things that Francis was dealing with, and yet he delivered once again. Unbelievable, man. Absolutely unbelievable.
It's heroic. It's heroic.
It's a great word for it. It really is. It's a great word for it.
So, we could go down so many rabbit holes. Let's leave it at heroic. Okay. Let's leave it at he overcame. the most unspeakable tragedy that anybody, you throw any, it's the most unspeakable tragedy having to bury a child and having to go through this, not being able to grieve, training, everything, almost pulling out, to his words, 2 weeks prior because he couldn't deal with it. He needed to grieve. He needed to start healing. Couldn't do any of that. Okay. To then pulling off this heroic effort. Unbelievable. But leads me to the future. Okay. From the emotion that Francis Ngannou had to put into this fight, the emotion coming out of the fight. Is he ever going to fight again?
It's a good question. It's a really good question. He kind of left it open-ended, right? You know, he didn't really, you always want to know what's next. And he kind of said, he kind of left it at, we'll see. You know what I mean? I think he needs some time off. As you said, he did not process everything. The processing began as the fight was waved off, and we were watching it in real time. And he needs some time to really put that through and to go through that grieving process and to go through everything that needs to be to get himself back. And then I think at that point, he gets to make a decision over what he wants to do. Now, here's the great thing, right? I mean, the man is 38 years old. At heavyweight, you can fight a little bit longer than most. Normally you see that. I don't know that boxing, I mean, he has a ton of options available to him, right? I don't know that boxing is necessarily the best route for him to go. I mean, he got a chance to scratch that itch, you know what I mean? To fulfill that dream. It didn't go his way. And it's tough. I mean, those are specialists in their field, right? So I don't know that boxing is the way to go, even though I'm sure there will still be plenty of big paydays available for him if he wants it. Mixed martial arts, I think, is the better option for him, though there doesn't seem to be any matchups that just scream that have to happen right now. There's nobody on the combined PFL Bellator roster that you look at and be like, right now, this is the fight I have to see. So, man.
I mean, let's be honest. There's some badass Russians that are going to give him everything he wants in PFL. But nobody 100%. With name value that's going to draw the numbers. Nobody that's saying, I need to see this fight.
That's it. That's it. That's the marketing side of it. I mean, as far as the tactical, skill level, are there athletes available that could give him a run for his money? Absolutely. There's some great fighters, but I'm talking about, because if he's in there, this is a pay-per-view event. You need to be a big marketing event. You're not sticking him on just some main card somewhere or co-main event. So you need a big matchup for him. And I don't know if there's anyone available for him right now, but if they can find somebody, I'd probably leave it at like 50-50 right now. I mean, the good thing is financially, he doesn't need it. I mean, I know he loves to compete and all that, but I think he's got to get through this little grieving period and see where his head's at that point. Because that's the beautiful thing. He doesn't have to fight. You know what I mean? He got the big paydays. He did everything he needed to do. He still got the executive role with PFL Africa that's going to be building as well. We've talked about that over the years. That's a great opportunity for him. So if I had to guess right now, I'd say it's a coin toss. I think it's 50-50.
I'm going to look at it logically and just say we're not. Like, listen, to build yourself back up from what you just overcame, that is a Herculean effort to get there, to do what he do, and then to maybe do it again. It's just asking too much of somebody. For what reason? The guy is now retired as the reigning, the linear heavyweight champion of the world in mixed martial arts, and we don't get to say that ever. Now we do. Okay. And what he has on the horizons from a business standpoint of, if you hear him talk, when you hear him talk about why it was important to get this, advisory role and this executive role with PFL Africa, is because he wants to build that up. Like, I see that as his passion, right? So let's bring something that brings you joy in building this up. And he's building gyms. He's building gyms in Africa, and now he can build fighters. He can build an organization on his home continent. Why fight? Honest, Francis, I don't want to see you fight. You left this heroic effort in the cage. I get chills talking about it. I'm a father of 3. And for you to do what you did is nothing short of heroic. And Jon freaking Jones agrees. For Jon Jones to put out a tweet afterwards being like, just amazing, Francis. That was it. And it wasn't just because of his skill in the cage. It's because Jon Jones is a freaking human being.
Yeah.
Much maligned human, but a human.
And a father as well.
And he understood it.
Yep.
And good on you, Jon.
if you know what I mean, like this is, I don't mean to make it sound trivial, but if this was a movie, the credits are rolling right now, right? I mean, that's the end of the story, right? You don't walk out of the theater going, but then what happens to our lead character? I need to know what the next chapter is. Because you're absolutely right. There's no better way to walk out of the sport than this, right? I mean, you got to go to boxing. You got these amazing paydays. You chased your dream. It didn't go your way. Now you come back to the sport where you built your superstardom and people doubt you. Do you still belong? Do you still have the skills to do it? Can you still? He said it. This was about, am I still relevant here? All those questions. And then you have to deal with an insane personal tragedy along the way. And yet you fight through all of it and you win. And you win in spectacular fashion. To me, that's the end of the story. And as you said, it's not the end of the story in terms of his life or the sport. He wants to continue to be involved in developing the sport, but he doesn't need to do it from a competition standpoint. And I know everybody's going to say, yeah, but what if they do this big crossover event with Jon Jones or Stipe Miocic or Tom Aspinall, however this whole thing sorts out? Get that out of your head. It's never going to happen. The UFC is not going to co-promote with another individual. I'm sorry. I'm just being realistic about it. You can debate until you're blue in the face. I remember being on message boards back in the day talking about, what if UFC and Pride had a crossover? Who would win? But you could talk yourself blue in the face if you want to do that. It's not going to happen. Don Davis, I love Don. He likes to stir the pot and poke the bear. He can do it all he wants, and Dana's just going to ignore him. I mean, leading into that fight, Dana was asked about Francis. You remember, he's like, why do I care? I don't think it got nothing to do with me. So that's not going to happen. So I agree with you. I think 50-50 just because you know as well as I do, it is hard to walk away from that spotlight, from that superstardom, from that competition. Will his role as an executive fulfill that need enough? I think it can. And I think it should. But that's why I leave it as 50-50. For me, I got nothing more I need to see from Francis Ngannou as a competitor. Man, he answered every question. He fulfilled every story. He's amazing. I got nothing I need to see to know about where he stands in the pages of history among the greatest heavyweights of all time. And I'd love to see him now as the ambassador and as helping to develop the sport moving forward in his home continent of Africa. So we'll see. But I know that, sometimes you get that itch and you're like, oh, one more, baby, one more. Let's go. It's tough.
I think normal people have that itch. Yeah. Like, I just don't like it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. And we said last week, or, I did, and then we talked about it and you agreed, this is a legacy fight for him. He had so much to lose. He had, along with everything else this guy was dealing with, he had his legacy to lose, his legacy in this sport to lose on Saturday afternoon. And you know what he did? He cemented that damn legacy. It's cemented now. You don't need Jon Jones to cement that legacy. You don't need Tom Aspinall. It's cemented.
Now, listen, this is hilarious because I just said, don't do this. Don't talk about this because it'll never happen. But what if in November, Jon Jones beats Stipe Miocic and he gets on the mic afterwards and he says, listen, guys, it's been real. I'm the greatest of all time. I think I've shown that. I'm done, man. I have nothing left to prove. Tom Aspinall, you're the future, and I'm happy to hand you this. Go, show your greatness now. You don't need to be me. But I'm only not riding off into the sunset if I can face one man. And that man's name is Francis Ngannou. And I don't know enough about business of how Dana White and Don Davis, I don't know how you guys pull this thing off. That's for you guys to figure out. But Jon Jones is either facing Francis Ngannou or he's heading home to New Mexico and he's riding off into the sunset. You guys sort it out. I'll talk to you later. You know where to find me. Do people try to make it happen at that way? Because if that happens, then Francis is fighting again, right? Or at least he's trying to fight again. I just said there's no way it'll happen.
Well,
if that happens,
I think that's a loaded question because is this the last fight on Jon Jones's contract?
I don't know that. I doubt it. There's no way they're letting him go into a title fight with it being the last fight on his contract. There's
just imagine if it was. Do you know how much money the Saudis and PFL would be throwing at Jon Jones if he got out of Stipe unscathed? But anyways, be that as it may.
I just said don't talk about it. Don't let your mind go through that. Don't give it any energy, but just think it would be amazing.
Hey, Francis Ngannou, what you did Saturday was heroic. I've always been a fan. I've never been emotionally invested in what you did, but man, it's heroic. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. How could you not, right? If you're a fan or not, Francis Ngannou, just as a human being, you have to be a fan of what happened.
Yeah. Let's go to the co-main event. Cyborg, wins by unanimous decision over Pachenko. And, whatever of a fight. I think Cyborg was a little bit better in every spot, albeit competitive, albeit Dan Hardy was a little bit of a homer in this fight. But at the end of the day, Cyborg at 38 or 39 is still doing it. But, I mean, there's not really much to talk about, I think, in this fight.
There's not, as far as the fight itself. I think, Larissa Pacheco, again, Larissa Pacheco, a game competitor, you know what I mean? Another one that I think maybe,
top tier in the
top tier that fans might not give enough respect for how good she is.
She beat Kayla Harrison, everybody.
She beat Kayla Harrison. So that tells you something. The only thing, and I'm kind of curious what you think about this. The only thing that I thought about after this fight, because you're right, it was a good fight, whatever. It's just the longevity of Cris Cyborg. And I wonder now, because I go back and forth on this a lot, man, is who do you rate as the greatest female fighter of all time? Because the problem is Cris Cyborg and Amanda Nunes, I think, are the two that are at the top of the discussion, right? And they crossed paths when they were both in their prime, and we know what happened. It was one of the most electric, I could tell you I was in the building that night, and that fight was a special fight. But Amanda Nunes had her hand raised. But Cris Cyborg was doing it before Amanda Nunes. She's still doing it after Amanda Nunes. That's the only loss she's had in forever. It was so. Common sense tells me, well, if two people were in their prime and they faced off with each other, and they're the two greatest of all time, and one of them won, then that one is the GOAT. But the longevity that Cris Cyborg has had, and how many titles she has, and how many different organizations and all these things, I feel like there's an argument for her, even though she lost that fight. And so I flip back and forth on it. And I'm curious if you feel strongly one way or the other.
I'm not going to say I feel strongly, but if you're going to ask me, it's Cyborg. For all the reasons, listen, there's only a 3-year difference in when they debuted. I just looked it up, pro fight, 05 for Cyborg, 08 for Amanda Nunes. But I think is who has been fighting the best in the world over the longest period of time? It's Cyborg.
It's Cyborg.
Who has been continuously winning over the best in the world for the longest period of time? It's Cyborg. Who has crossed over to other sports, whether it be boxing or Muay Thai? It's Cyborg.
Yep.
Okay. Who at 38, 39, I forgot her age, is still a world champion, right now? It's Cyborg.
I know.
So with that being said, this is not in any way, shape, or form to diminish Amanda Nunes, but at 28-2, and only 2 losses are one her pro debut and Amanda Nunes, I don't see how big of a fight that can be.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the way I feel about it as well, man. I think I side with you on every part of that. And as well, and by the way, if for whatever reason you've never seen the 51 seconds of chaos that is Amanda Nunes versus Cris Cyborg, watch it. It is unbelievable. It may be hard to put it into context as to what it was at the time, but even if you can't go back and put it into the context of 2018, it's just a chaotic, insane, fun 51 seconds. But I almost think that because of the fight that it was, it almost should have less impact. If for whatever reason, Amanda Nunes had just dog walked Cris Cyborg for 25 minutes, right? Where you're just like, these two aren't even on the same, they're not even the same league. What are we doing here? Then maybe it's even more of an impact where you go, come on, man, we saw what happened. But what we saw was Rock'em Sock'em Robots for 51 seconds. And yes, Amanda Nunes had her hand raised, but you go back to the longevity, the multiple organizations, the multiple sports. And I do believe, even though common sense should tell you they have a head-to-head result, you favor that head-to-head result, I think it's Cris Cyborg is the greatest of all time.
There's also something that I want to acknowledge. Literally, Amanda Nunes from about, let me look at it, 2011 on, was fighting in a premier organization, whether it be Strikeforce or the UFC. Okay. Mm-hmm. So she was always able to get fights. everybody has been running from Cyborg since the minute she was in this sport. Nobody even wanted to fight her. People were forced to fight Nunes. So I think it was easier for her to get fights, outside of like the hardcores. I mean, I think everybody's going to say Nunes, this, that, and the other. But I think when we look back, like, I don't think this is a hot take to say right now. I think the UFC wanted nothing to do with bringing Cyborg in while Ronda Rousey was running roughshod over the women's division. I don't think that's a hot take.
No, it's not. They had their superstar, and obviously Ronda Rousey, man, what she meant to the sport and to really putting women's MMA on the map. I mean, granted, it had been on network television before, but that was really when it reached the next level. And I think, they knew. I mean, I think the matchmakers knew stylistically this might not be a great thing for Ronda. Why are we going to try to put this thing together? And Ronda certainly wasn't, trying to make that fight at the time either. You remember she was saying, hey, look at, she's been busted. I don't want anything to do with that. So she wasn't trying to put anything together. So I completely agree with that. And man, I think everything that Cyborg has gone through in all the organizations, and she rises to the top every single time. And like, as you said, I mean, lost her debut, but is 28-1 since. I mean, that's unbelievable at any level of the sport to have that type of domination at any level. I'm telling you, even you find somebody that's 28-1 on the regional scene, they're good. They're dang good if they were able to put something like that together, because it's impossible to have that many victories. So, man, that's kind of what I took out of this fight. No, nothing against Larissa Pacheco. I have a lot of respect for Larissa Pacheco, man. Like what she did, the win over Kayla was amazing. It's crazy the journey that she's been on. Came to the UFC as a teenager, way too early in her career. She's had an incredible journey as well. But that's kind of what I walked out of this fight thinking is, you know what? I think Cris Cyborg really is the greatest of all time. No disrespect to Amanda Nunes. Amanda Nunes is right there. And if you want to come back to me and say, John, I think it's Amanda Nunes, I'm not going to argue with you. You know what I mean? Like, you can make that case. It's like, you're right. You got the head-to-head result. You got that on your side. But that just longevity of Cyborg is something special.
Oh, yeah. And the aura that she's had for that long is special, too. Want to talk about one last fight really quick. And I just want to express a frustration in it. Was Johnny Eblen, Fabian Edwards. Good fight. Johnny pressure Eblen does what he does, wins 4 rounds. I don't know how they gave it 29 or 28-27. But anyways, he clearly won the first 4 rounds. Then round 5 is Fabian Edwards really starts, picking up the pace. And I really don't think he picked up the pace because Eblen was tired. I think he got a lot more tired because the pace was put on him but Fabian and Leon, they fight the same way with no urgency.
I know.
And I think Fabian Edwards can be one of the best in the world if he fought with the urgency the rest of the fight as he does in the 5th and final here, because I think he fought masterfully. I really think he could have beat Eblen if he fought that way earlier. I don't think he's not capable, and I don't think it was because Eblen got tired. I just think that these Edward brothers, whether it be their personality, I don't know, it just doesn't seem that there's any urgency that they have.
Yeah, I agree. And it's tough to say, to make a blanket statement over the both, but it's a parallel between both of their careers where you're just like, what are you like? They're skilled. Like, there is no question about their skill level, their abilities, but you're just pull the trigger. Like, what are you doing? Pull the trigger, go. So I think it's an astute observation. And I think it's one that probably, if Fabian's being honest with himself, and it's plagued him throughout his career. But I think this was a big, big moment in his career. And I think that, he's got to be a little bit frustrated when he's watching it back or thinking it back through his mind. It's like, man, if you'd have just pulled the trigger a little bit earlier, maybe things could have gone differently.
Yeah, it's like admiring when you do throw shots, and you can't admire, in this at that top level. I don't know what it was. But anyways, hey, listen, gosh, we went a little too long on that, but that's what we do. UFC 308, Saturday afternoon from spacing.
Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, I was like, is it Abu Dhabi? Was it
Saudi Arabia, brother? I'm telling you, the Middle East is where all the big fights are happening right now.
Yeah, Dubai. I'm like, I was thinking Dubai or Abu Dhabi. Well, I couldn't figure it out. But anyways, Ilia Topuria, 15-0. Max Holloway, 26-7. Topuria, minus 230 favorite as of this morning, which is Monday, October 21st. Holloway on the plus 190 comeback. We talked odds that we were a little shocked at these minus 230 plus 190. What are your thoughts?
A little bit surprised. I'm anxious to see how this fight plays out, right? Because I understand why Topuria is the favorite, and I think he should be. I mean, he's undefeated. He's the champion. He looks like, I think he's a more well-rounded fighter. But I do think that, Max Holloway is one of these once-in-a-generation type fighters, and the ability and the heart that he has and the skills that he has. And the time that he's had at the highest level of the sport and knowing what a main event feels like and knowing what the pressure situation feels like. There's just so many things that, I don't know, if you tell me I can get underdog money, I can get plus money on Max Holloway, I don't even need to hear who he's 45. Facing. Yeah, at 45. I don't even need to hear who he's facing. Just let me know. And then afterwards, I'll find out who the opponent is, and I'll still feel good about the money I just laid down there. So I love this fight, man. I mean, you and I have been talking about this card for months. We've been talking about, is the main or the co-main event the more exciting fight, the more exciting fight. But this main event is spectacular. And I'm really, really excited to see how this thing plays out, because to me, I believe maybe the simpler path to victory, and you know me, man, I'm always looking for the easiest path to victory. I believe the simpler path to victory for Ilia Topuria is to engage in the grappling early and often. But man, you talk about the gangster vibe that he has, and I see the
turtleneck.
Oh my! I tell you, when you wear a turtleneck, you know what I'm saying. You got to have some fun.
Yeah, you wear a turtleneck in 2024.
I think
you got to have confidence.
And look, Ilia has otherworldly power as well, right? But I mean, we did just see Max Holloway flatline Justin Gaethje, who was one of. I mean, we went into that talking about we're scared, we hate this matchup, we love it, but we hate it, and he goes out there and flatlines him. Could he not flatline Ilia Topuria as well? Could he not take the shots? If he took the shots of Justin Gaethje, you're telling me he can't take the shots of Ilia Topuria? So, and I feel like Ilia is going to want to strike, because I think he wants to prove to the world that, he's this heavy-handed knockout artist and nobody can box him. And you sent that guy. Max Holloway is the best boxer in the UFC. That's who you sent after me. And I just left him unconscious on the floor. And I think that's what Ilia wants to do. And I don't think that's the easiest path to victory. Not that he can't win it that way, but if you told me, hey, John, I'm not supposed to say this, keep this between us. I've been game planning with Ilia, and he said he's just going to fake a couple punches and just drive right in on the double immediately off the start. And his job is to just hold the thing down and look for submissions and ground and pound. I'm like, give me my favorite money all day, because I think he can execute that game plan. But I don't know if that's what he wants to do.
So I have it here in my notes. Started doing a little research this weekend. I put paths to victory.
Yep.
Ilia, speed. I think he has the speed advantage. I do believe he has the power advantage.
I do. I agree.
And I do believe he has the crisper striking. Okay.
He does. Correct.
And he's got the heavy grappling advantage. Okay.
Yes.
So he's got, those are his paths to victory. Now, Max Holloway. So it's a two-tiered path for Ilia. For Max, he needs to use his length, his elusivity, like he did in the Gaethje fight. He needs to change up his rhythm like he did in the Gaethje fight, and use the power. He needs to turn that power on and off. He needs to keep that power when that power shots are coming. He needs to keep that guessing. So with that being said, do I think a minus 230 is a little bit steep? I do. When I'm really thinking about this, I really think it should probably be around a minus 180, 185, somewhere in that range, just because, as we talked about earlier, what are the paths to victory? How many paths to victory do you have? Ilia Topuria clearly has more paths to victory. Right. Now, Max Holloway, his greatest strength in this, can negate all of them very easily with his length and his being, very elusive. I mean, he is phenomenal elusive striker. And so with his length and that, can he mitigate all that? Yes, he can. But for how long? That's the question. And if this goes to the ground, one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioner for MMA in the world is a guy named Bryce Mitchell, and he made him look like a child.
It's absolutely true, man. That is a great assessment. I'm looking at the stats on UFC.com, and I don't know if this is a typo or if we need to get the measuring tape back out. They are both listed, Ilia Topuria and Max Holloway, as having 69-inch reaches. I do not believe for a second their reach is exactly the same. Maybe it is, but it sure doesn't feel like. Now, the leg reach.
So then should I cross length off my strength?
But I thought the same thing. I mean, that's the way. Now, I will say the leg reach is listed at 42 for Max and 37 for Ilia. Obviously, we know Ilia is a little bit, shorter in stature. But I do feel like link. But I think what you said is spot on. Regardless of whether that is an accurate measurement or not, they don't fight that way. It certainly doesn't seem that way. And as you said it, I mean, how great is it for Max Holloway that you're saying, the best path to victory, do what you literally just did in your last fight. You know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine a better preparation for a fight than to say, hey, that same training camp you just put in, that same execution you just did, do that. And that's your best path to victory.
It's going to be coming at 5 times faster speed.
This is true. The speed is going to be there. Yeah, I understand that. We just need you to turn up the speed on a little bit. And that's it. Look, I mean, I guess for Ilia, that's a good thing to know. Like, hey, I can stand and bang. And if for whatever reason I get clipped or I'm not liking the way these exchanges are going, I'm going to take this thing to the ground. Because I believe Ilia, as you said, I think the path to victory for me, the easiest is the grappling aspect. I don't think that's the way he's going to want to start it. But as you know, it is nice, and I like the way you laid it out. It's very nice to have multiple paths to victory, and Ilia clearly has that, right? Whereas if game plan A isn't getting the job done, I can go to game plan B, and that's a legitimate way for me to win this as well. I don't know, and I don't mean this in terms of disrespect towards Max Holloway. I don't know that he necessarily has multiple ways of winning this. I think the way he wins this is exactly the way you laid out and exactly what he did last time out, which he is clearly capable of doing. We'll just see what Ilia wants to do as well. I think Ilia is the rightful favorite in this fight. But it's a hell of a fight. And Max Holloway, like I said, if I can get underdog money against Max Holloway against anybody at 45, I'm taking it. I don't care who it is. So this is a hell of a fight, man. It's a great first round.
This first round is going to be so interesting to me. Now, typically all first rounds are pretty damn interesting about where the fight is going to go. But this one in particular, because I believe that Ilia Topuria is going to have to solve a riddle very early to make which he didn't have to solve against Volkanovski. He just had to pressure him. Eventually we'll get in the inside. Bing, bang, boom. That was his path to victory. Right. But it's going to be interesting to see. One, we don't see Ilia get hit very often and very hard.
Right.
So do I think Max is going to come out there and sting him with a few hard jabs right off the bat? Probably. And then is he going to follow up with an overhand that clips him? Probably. And it's going to be interesting to see what either one, if he has a very composed manner to countering all that, or whether it's natural instinct and diving for a takedown, or whether it's natural instinct of wanting to get it back right away. We just haven't seen any of that out of Topuria because he's been so utterly dominant. I'm fascinated to see this.
It really is. And, obviously coming off a win over Alexander Volkanovski, that is a true great. I mean, but he's only been fighting at the highest level for the last couple of fights. So we haven't seen just years long history of how he deals with these certain situations. And that's what, as we said, when we assess it, that's what we're just looking for is, right? You can't know for sure until you see it, right? That's when you understand how things will react. So those are where the question marks are. Those are where the potential opportunities are. We're not saying they're weaknesses. We're not saying, this is where he'll fold. We just don't know at this point. And the win over Volkanovski, I don't want to say tainted. It's still a win over Alexander Volkanovski, right? But was it 100% Alexander Volkanovski? Not so sure about that. Stellar win nonetheless. He went out there and got it done. And look, it's exciting. It's going to be a great fight week. We've already seen, they started having a couple of interviews back and forth. Max Holloway obviously is not going to take crap from anybody. He's got the track record to prove that he doesn't need to. And Ilia Topuria
respects him for getting up after his seven losses. He wouldn't know what it's like because he's undefeated, but he respects that he's been able to get up and dust himself off after 7 losses.
Savage backhand compliment right there, dude. That was great, man. Like I really have to respect you to have lost that many times and to keep coming back. Like, I wouldn't know. I don't envy having to going through that someday. So proud of you. Yeah, that was great, dude. It's gonna be fun. This fight week is gonna be great. All the things, but it leads to just a high level mixed martial arts contest, right? Like we love the rivalries, we love the stories, we love the back and forth, but only when it means it's a high level title fight as well. That's when you get to that next level, and this is a high level title fight between a dude that is at the top of the game right now and has not been beaten versus one of the all-time greats who's coming off. And I find it hard to argue with your assessment of the greatest highlight in mixed martial arts history with that knockout of Justin Gaethje. I mean, this is as good as
the most epic moment in UFC history.
I can't argue with that. There are not many times, if any. Well, I mean, it is the only one in my hundreds and hundreds of moments of being cage-side where I stood up, hands on my head. I was just like, oh man.
I said, that's John Morgan right there. See the completely unprofessional journalist right there who's going nuts in press row. That's my podcast partner. But
I had to remember. I was like, oh, sit down, John. Sit down. You're here working.
Yeah. Gosh. I mean, Mark Goddard lost it.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true, right? So we all did. All of us lost it. Man. We were all.
I woke up my kids. Just going, oh! But yeah. Hey, we don't have that much time. So we won. I know how Max is going to fight. When he gets rocked, he's going to throw down. Okay.
Yes.
I'm anxious to see what happens when Ilia gets touched and touched hard. I'm anxious to see that reaction, or if he's even gonna, because we haven't seen it much. So, who knows? That's why I think this is such an exciting matchup. Take the personalities and the legends and throw them out the window just for that question. I'm very interested. But now moving on to the fight that I said 3 months ago I was most looking forward to in this epic stretch of MMA that we had coming up. And it's going to be Robert Whittaker, 27-6, fighting Chimaev at 13-0. Now, Chimaev coming in at a -218 favorite with the comeback on Whittaker at +180. Quickly, paths to victory are roughly the same for each person. It just matters of early or late. I think these fighters are roughly the same. It's just Whittaker is going to do it slower over a longer period of time, and Chimaev, historically speaking, is going to be a freaking Tasmanian devil at a round and a half. Start fluttering from there.
Yeah, 100% right. I mean, both of these guys, like, does Robert Whittaker have the ability to end a fight early? He does. He's ended fights early. He can. Could Khamzat Chimaev, if he does get tested and pushed late, could he find a submission late, or could he get himself to a dominant position and just pound away for TKO? He can. So anything can happen, but you're 100% right. Like, if I tell you this fight is going to end in round 1, everybody is going to assume that it was a Khamzat Chimaev victory. If I tell you this thing went the distance or it ended in round 5, you're going to say, oh, so Whittaker got it done. You know what I mean? That's just the way it's going to be. And I think that's it's very truthful. It's a very honest and accurate assessment. But this fight is so good, man. This fight is so good. And I think, a lot of the buzz around Khamzat Chimaev has kind of waned in recent times because of the illnesses, because of the lack of activity. And I get it. I don't think he's the superstar that he once was. But man, that's the great thing about this sport is you could change all that in a second, right? And the way this dude fights, if he wins, is going to be spectacular. And then he's going to get on the mic and he's going to say something crazy. And he's got that savage wolf attitude it is unbelievable. So I am thrilled with this. And I'm with you, man. I was actually watching the Countdown episode and I was thinking, man, this title fight is unbelievable. As we've gotten closer and closer, I think the co-main event really is starting to creep up, and it's not a title fight, so that UFC belt, that world title means something. But damn, again, Robert Whittaker, future Hall of Famer, no question about it, much beloved. There's a lot of shades of the main event in terms of like who's involved in it. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, Khamzat, unbelievably dangerous, undefeated, but is he really that guy? We're going to find out if he's that guy. So this is just a spectacular test for both these athletes, man. And I love this fight.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see Chimaev. Is he going to come screaming out the tunnel? Right? If he comes screaming out the tunnel, jumping and running to the cage, then I'm going to be like, ooh, he's got a round in him. He's only got one round in him. But if he I'm anxious to see if he's learned anything about controlling himself. But I don't think you can change the fighter. You can't change the person inside the fight. You may be able to fine tune things, get a little wiser, but I don't think we're ever going to say, Chimaev, he's a 5-round fighter, boy.
Yeah. And you know what? And sometimes when you do that, you end up costing yourself effectiveness, right? Like what makes him so effective is the fact that, dude, I'm going 100%. That's it. But we know it's not like when Merab Dvalishvili was fighting Sean O'Malley, I think we were leaning towards Merab, because look, there's the activity level, he's never going to stop. Khamzat will stop. You know what I mean? So it's like, and I think that helps Whittaker a lot. It's like, I know I'm going through 5 minutes of hell, but I have got to, under all circumstances, find a way through this 5 minutes of hell, because once I get on the other side of that, things will start to flip the other way. And I think if Khamzat was to slow himself down, I don't know that he would be as effective or as feared. And so, I don't know. To your point, I don't know if it makes sense to even try to adjust and be like, Khamzat, let's make sure, we just save some energy so we can go for 5.
Here's what I said. I'm going to have an analysis of what Whittaker needs to do to survive this first round. And I was going back and watching a lot of the way that Chimaev will attack the back. He gets a lot of backs on people, chokes them out. He is so fast on his level change and his entry, but he cuts a corner so fast on somebody and jumps the back before the takedown is even complete, almost like on the way to the ground. And, if that happens, Whittaker almost just has to accept the takedown and just get to his back immediately, get flat backed immediately, and then maybe start working from there. Because we're not seeing lots of Darces and, things of that nature from Chimaev. But I'll tell you what, he's got the smoothest entry I've ever seen in this game and the fastest. And how he does it, he doesn't drive through doubles. He cuts an angle on doubles like lightning fast. And he's able to throw a hook in and jump the back while he's doing it. It's so damn impressive to watch. So Whittaker's got to either accept it or just back himself up to the cage, take a utterly defensive posture, and just be as diligent as you can for the first 5 minutes for sure, probably 10, and then just turn the gas up after that.
Yeah, and the great thing about it is if there's a guy that has the ability to do that and to not panic in those spots. I was smiling a little bit because as you were talking about that, and I think you laid it out effectively. I was just kind of looking through Robert Whittaker's track record. It is insane the names he has fought. I mean, Ikram Aliskerov last time out, okay, people say, well, that guy wasn't ready, but that guy, it looks like he has the potential to be very, very special. But then you go Paulo Costa, Dricus du Plessis, Marvin Vettori, Israel Adesanya, Kelvin Gastelum, Jared Cannonier, Darren Till, Israel Adesanya, Yoel Romero twice, Ronaldo Jacare Souza, Derek Brunson. I mean, we're going back to 2016 before you get to Rafael Natal, which, by the way, was a dangerous dude in his heyday. Uriah Hall, Brad Tavares. I mean, it's just the names that this guy has fought consecutively. It is absolutely unbelievable. So if there's anybody that is mentally and physically prepared to deal with the duress that you are going to be put under when you're facing Khamzat Chimaev, it's Robert Whittaker. So, I mean, this opening 5 minutes is going to be intriguing as well. These top 2 fights, man, as good as it gets in mixed martial arts.
Yeah, I mean, he has a lot of Bravo choke finishes, which is, it's a weird position to get to. It's more of a no-gi grappling. So his grappling is at the front. And so that's what I'm saying. Just don't fight this if you're Whittaker. Just lay on your back. If you think you're going to be getting taken down, Chimaev will almost invite you up to come up so he can grab a front headlock and lock something up right there or jump the back. So you almost have to just buy your time, accept the L's in real time to eventually get the W.
That's it. Just know that, hey, it's not over here. This is just step number one, and we knew to expect this, and now we battled through it. So, man, as good as it gets in those top two, and I know we're running out of time, but Lerone Murphy, Danny Ige is a phenomenal fight there between two absolute studs. Magomed Ankalaev and Alexander Rakic has big meanings in the light heavyweight division. And then I love that they put this as the main card opener. Sharon Magomedov and Armin Petrosyan. I mean, those two dudes, that should be just a fun, like, there's not going to be any grappling in that one. Like, that is kickboxing in 4-ounce gloves. So they're going to go at it. So this is just a fun card. And again, reminder that it is early in the day because it's prime time in Abu Dhabi. So if you're getting excited about the card, don't show up on Saturday night at the normal time expecting to watch this thing, right? We're talking about a 2 p.m. Eastern main card, 11 a.m. Pacific. So I'm looking forward to it. You imagine that? 7 a.m., bro. I get fights at 7 a.m. out here in Las Vegas. Like,
that means I get in at 9, so I'm happy.
Putting on the coffee and getting to some fights right away.
I don't know why nobody's talking about this guy, but I am really looking forward to seeing him fight again. I saw him fight in person when he just dismantled Kevin Lee. Renan Ferreira. I don't know how to say his name.
You're not looking forward to saying his name, but you are looking forward to watching him.
Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, you're Renat Fakhratinov. Absolutely.
Yeah, just say it so fast. You're so cool, John.
You just say it fast, and then you don't have to necessarily get it right. But he's fighting Nursultan Roziboyev, so that's a fantastic fight as well. Renat is a huge favorite in that matchup, but that's a dangerous opponent in Nursultan. So that's a great fight early on.
That dude is just a savage.
Unbelievable, man. That is a heck of a fight for sure.
Man, I'm looking for that's kind of like my sleeper on the undercard. Like, I think everybody needs to watch out for that guy, but I don't know why. I mean, he had a draw like a fight or two ago. I'm not looking at his record right now, but I know he's got a draw in there somewhere, which I think may have then stopped pushing him to a degree, and he's buried on the undercard. But the dude is a freaking savage, and I think he's going to be top 10 very soon, and I think everybody is going to know how to pronounce the name that I don't know how to pronounce.
He absolutely could. I tell you what, this is another one I think that maybe if we're just looking for undercard things that might be getting overlooked. Miktabek Oribal versus Mateusz Rebecki. I think that should be a great fight. Now, Mateusz is coming off a loss over Diego Ferreira, but if you remember, it was a hell of a fight, and I just think he's an absolute assaulting fire hydrant of a man. But Oribal, he looks like the real deal as well, man. He's got incredible grappling, which you and I are both big fans of, guys with aggressive, powerful grappling with, ground and pound and submission opportunities. So a lot of good fights up here. Like I said, the top two fights are going to steal all the air in the discussion ahead of this, as they should, because it is as high level as you get in the world of mixed martial arts, both in terms of skill level, storylines, meaning in the division, all those things. But this is a fun card. And again, I love early morning cards. I love early morning cards.
And then you get the random Jeff Neal RDA.
Right?
I think so like, random for this card.
Why is that happening over there, man? But that'll be a great one as well. Yeah. That'll be a great one as well.
Well, with that being said, obviously, we're really looking forward to it. It's like, I cannot wait for this main and co-main. We've been saying it a lot. We'll say it again, and I can't wait to recap it. I can't wait to see what happens. I'm anxious to see like what happens when Topuria gets hit, because I think Holloway's going to stick him with that jab. And then what instinct are you going to go to Topuria? That's just what I'm really interested to see. Does Chimaev have more than a round and a half? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine, right? History is going to say no, but he hasn't fought in a long time. So, we'll see. And again, I can't state it enough how heroic of a performance with everything going on that Francis Ngannou just put on this past weekend, albeit, wasn't visually pleasing to the fans. It's not what we wanted, but heroic nonetheless.
Absolutely, man. I love that word for it. It was phenomenal, man. So great fights, man. I like I said, early morning, man, this whole weekend should be great. Could have two insane underdogs from two of the most well-loved, well-respected athletes in the sport, or you could have the next generation, staking their claim at the top of the division. So a lot of
could be the most hated man in MMA if he knocks off Max Holloway. He knocks off the beloved Alexander the Great, then comes back to literally, I can't think of a more beloved, universally beloved fighter than Max Blessed Holloway. And if he knocks off those two guys in back to back to really make his name in the UFC, people are going to hate this guy.
And then puts
They're
that
gonna hate this
turtleneck
mafia boss.
puts that turtleneck right back on and that suit jacket and the gold chains and comes out and just be the snarky son of a gun in the press conference. Like, oh man, he's got all kinds of swag, man. He's got all kinds of swag. And then, and that would lead into him potentially fighting in Spain sometime next year. The UFC is trying to get that done. So how cool would that be, man? I mean, to have a stadium event in Spain or something unbelievable. But Max Holloway, the best is blessed. He can ruin all that. We know what Max Holloway is capable of. Nobody had him knocking out Justin Gaethje. Nobody had him knocking out Justin Gaethje, and look at what he did. I mean, unbelievable. So we're in for something special, I think, one way or the other.
Last thing before we sign off. So we know the odds makers. We know what we think, more paths to victory. Do you think the common person, the casual fan, you think everybody's picking Max Holloway in this just on name value?
I think so. I mean, I definitely do. I think you'll see a lot of that casual money kind of move late, right? Like, how do you not? I mean, he is just that beloved. And again, we've seen a dude that can battle through adversity. I mean, we're talking about power and chin, but he's got chin. He can last. So yeah, 100%. I mean, I think if you're really just breaking down, as you said, just let's take the names out of it. Let's just look at the skills of fighter A versus the skills of fighter B. It should probably be an even wider line, to be honest with you, right? But I think Max Holloway, he has that little something extra inside of him that you can't really put on paper, that makes him a little bit special. And he's just so beloved. Who doesn't want to throw some money down on their guy?
I hope the weight cut isn't too tough. I think that's going to be a big tell in this, especially over in Abu Dhabi. But with that being said, anything else you want to throw in before we sign off?
No, that's it, man. Kind of an easy week at home, and then we should have the full announcement for the season of CFFC Match Day. I think that's all been officially approved, and so we should see the full schedule announcement. But just mark that on your calendars. October 31st, we're going to be kicking off the NCAA wrestling season on UFC Fight Pass. So I'm looking very forward to that. We had a great season last year, and man, we've got some big name programs lined up, starting with Wyoming and Campbell from a rodeo grounds in Cheyenne, Wyoming, on October 31st.
Yeah, boy.
So we're looking forward to it, man. Obviously, I know you're a big fan of NCAA Division I wrestling, and so we're going to get to put it on Fight Pass again, and some big name programs coming up. So look out for that. We'll have the full announcements by the time we get together next week.
Good stuff. UFC Fight Week, pay-per-view Fight Week. You just heard it here. We broke it down. We look back to Francis Ngannou. For John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.